Welcome everyone to our office hour session on Figma Buzz. We are so excited to introduce you all to Figma Buzz today and teach you the basics of using Figma Buzz for your team to create on-brand digital assets. My name is Katie Chambers and I'm an advocate here.
And I'm Mallory. I'm a designer advocate, also on Katie's team. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks so much. And we'll be facilitating today's session. We're also going to be joined by wonderful members of our product and marketing team later who have been building Figma Buzz, and they will be coming on to answer your questions at the end. We're going to start now by giving you a quick overview of what Figma Buzz is, and then we'll spend the majority of today's session digging into a demo to show you the basics of how to get started and how to use Figma Buzz, and then we'll wrap up at the end with any questions that you have. So if you have questions throughout, I'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A area to bring those in throughout as on topics we're discussing, but then again, we'll have plenty of time to open up to those questions at the end. Fantastic. And just seeing so many wonderful people here from all over. So great to have you here. We're so excited to get the buzz going about Figma Buzz. So digging in here, what is Figma Buzz? Figma Buzz is a platform to allow teams to create on-brand digital assets with the power of Figma design and the ease of use that also non-designers like our marketers, our art directors need in order to have an easy creation platform. So it's meant to make asset creation easy for everyone. So whether you're creating assets for any type of content, whether it be social media, like our social media managers that we have on the line, or whether it's invites for events that you're running, all of those can be made in Figma Buzz, and you'll have the power and also the content that your team has already been putting in Figma. So we'll dig into all of that today and just talking briefly about the kind of core experiences that we'll be digging into here. So it all starts with simplified editing. Figma Buzz is meant to be easy for anyone to create anything. And so we're hoping that you all can see that, how simple it is today, and start creating and feel confident creating in Figma Buzz for whatever type of content you need to create. And then you can also leverage the latest AI models to riff on your content. So you can do things like edit images, which we'll do live together today, and also create net new images if you need content. You can also use AI to rewrite your copy, refine your copy, translate, just have that power of up-leveling your content creation workflows using the latest power of AI. The real power of Figma Buzz comes in working with your team and collaborating across teams to create branded content. And that all relies on the foundation of publishing your templates. So the template publishing process is very easy, especially if you're coming from Figma design. And Mal's going to walk us through that end-to-end process to get your templates published in Figma Buzz, and also some of the best practices where you can make your templates as easy as possible to use here. And with those templates, once you publish them, they then have guidelines that your team will use in order to stay on brand. So we'll show you also, once those templates are published, how does your team leverage them? And if you are someone who's going to be leveraging your team's templates, how do you go about using those? And how can you make sure that when you're using those templates, you're staying on brand? And that all relies on those brand guidelines that are built into the templates. And then last but not least, a fan favorite of Figma Buzz is our bulk create. It allows you to create hundreds of assets in a matter of seconds. We will show you that live so you can actually see how magical that is. And that allows you to create batches of assets for multiple layouts all at once using this data that you already have available about your content. So that's the quick overview of what we're going to cover today and what's possible in Figma Buzz. We're going to dig now into our demo, and we'll demo all of what we just talked about now. I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat as well as the Q&A to make sure we cover anything, and we'll go right into the demo now. So I am in Figma Slides, of course. Figma Slides is part of the Figma platform and will be included in the content seat that Figma Buzz is available on as well. So you can use Figma Slides for your presentations like we are now. But this is all about Figma Buzz, and you can go and create a new Figma Buzz file in Figma by going to your file browser. Just go to figma.com and log in, or I'm in the app right now so you can see what this app looks like. So when I create a new file, I have this Buzz option, and that's where you go to create new content, on-branded content with your team. When you first open Figma Buzz, you'll be greeted with this wonderful templates modal. Here you can start from scratch by choosing a blank asset size. You can choose from your branded templates, which I'll dig into in just a moment. And then you have a bunch of hundreds, literally hundreds of out-of-the-box templates for any type of content that you might be creating. So in the United States, we have Father's Day coming up here, so you'll see some of those featured at the top here, as well as graduation, congrats cards, but also hundreds of work use cases as well. So whether it's ads or social media, you can find all of that. And you can also browse through the different categories over here on the left. So lots of ways to get started in Buzz, starting from one of these out of the box templates. I'm going to go into that new file and grab one of these. We're kind of running an AMA later, so I'm going to start with an Ask Me Anything template here. When you start from an out-of-the-box template or start from scratch, you're brought into what we call free-form editing here in Figma Buzz. What that means is I can edit anything that is in this asset. So I can come in here. It's not just going to be me. It's going to be me and Mal answering all of your questions. So I'm going to pull in two photos here, and I'm just going to start editing this content. So once I pull up one of those out-of-the-box templates, I can change anything that I want about it in free-form editing. So I could change this to another color. We're talking about Buzz, so maybe I'll make this a little bit more of a pink color, a little bit lighter so we can still see the background. And then I can start doing things like swapping out images. So I'm going to add an image of myself and an image of Mal here. Great. I got Mal's photo. Great. And then I'll grab in my photo as well. And so you can see how easy it is to come in and just start editing the content that's in here. So I have my photo. I can also do things like cropping that. So if I wanted to change the crop on my photo to get that photo centered, there we go. So that's starting to look great. You also have image controls if you wanted to do things like adjust the saturation. Maybe we want both of these to be black and white images. Again, I'm just clicking on the photo there and going to this adjust image settings. So I'm hoping that you see how easy it is to start coming in and creating here in Figma Buzz and how much power you have to really make this asset look just like you'd like. In Figma Buzz, we make use of inline toolbars, which again is meant to provide the most common kind of editing tools right at your fingertips. And then you have other tools that you can find in the pop-up menus here. If you want to edit the text or images that are on your asset, we have this edit content panel here that makes it easy to swap out some of these. So if I wanted to swap out some of these questions, I could either double click or I could come into the content panel and edit those. So maybe you all might be wondering, how do I create in Figma Buzz? If I could type, I create in Figma Buzz. Perfect. So you can see how easy it is to just start riffing in this free-form content. That's looking pretty good, but I want to call out a few of the tools you have available to also add elements into your free-form templates when you're starting this way. So over here on the left, in the left rail here, we have first our templates. So that's where if you're already in a file and you want to create a new asset, you can add in another template. You also have text inserts, where if you don't have text already on the canvas that you want to leverage and you want to add something else, you can add in some standard text options here and also some preset options that our amazing designers created for you. You can also add images. This is where you can leverage, again, AI if you want to create an image, or you can upload those images here. You also have some shapes available. And then the most powerful one here, in my opinion, are these inserts here. This is where if your team is already using Figma Design, you can leverage the full power of all of the design libraries that have been published. So here, if I open this up, you'll see some out-of-the-box templates for things that I love, like arrows, and we might want maybe a question mark or something like that, so I can search for a little question mark sticker. This one looks great, so I'll add that to the canvas. But also I can leverage our brand elements by pulling in libraries. So we have a brand library that's published for here for Figma. This is a Figma Ask Me Anything, so I can go ahead and add in our logo here. Great. And also, if your team has configured these with any variants of the components, we can swap the content and swap between those different options. So if I needed to put this on a dark background, I could change that to the light version of the logo, for example. Great. That's looking pretty good. I'm not a designer, but I'm I'm loving it. The last thing is, of course, is not ask me anything, it's ask us anything. So you can see here, I'm getting hearts, I'm getting a lot of excitement. So I'm sensing that the group is thinking this looks good as well. I'm not going to ask Natasha, our designer, because I'm sure this isn't on brand, but you can see that it's very easy for me as a non-designer to come in here and start creating. But we mentioned that Figma Buzz was to help you create on-brand digital assets. And this I've created and I have fun with this. I could certainly publish this internally, but if I was going to send this out, this isn't on brand. So I would want to make sure that I'm following our brand guidelines if I'm publishing that needs to be sent out externally. And so instead of starting from a out of the box template or from scratch, in cases where you need to be staying on brand or creating much more quickly with your brand elements, instead of using the first party templates here, you can start from your branded templates. So here I can just toggle this over to from our organization, and then I can see all of the templates that have been published by our designers or by folks who have created templates for our team. And then for something that needs to be on brand, I can make sure that I'm staying on brand by using these templates instead of those or starting from scratch. So let's imagine that I'm getting ready to run a workshop for groups to do some hummingbird watching in our local park. I can come in here and grab one of these templates. And then this editing experience is going to be what we call focused editing. We were just doing freeform editing where I could move anything that's in this asset. When you're starting from your team's branded templates, it brings you into focused editing. And the difference there is that I can't move anything that's in this asset. So I can't move any of these text boxes. Also, my insert tools here are all disabled. So I know that as long as I'm editing the content that's in this template, this is going to stay on brand. And that's the goal here of our branded templates. That said, I also have this edit content panel that makes it very clear exactly what I should be editing. So I just mentioned we're going to be doing a hummingbird hike maybe. I can come in here and start editing that content here. And then I can also make changes to things like the images that are here. So I can swap out text and I can swap out images that have been set up in my template. I'm going to show you how to use AI for this. So if I have an image that I want to upload, I can simply click upload and then swap out the image that I have. But maybe I don't have an image of a hummingbird that I want to use for this particular promo. In this case, I can click the AI button down here and I can have two options. I can either make an entirely new image or I can edit the image that I already have. I'm going to choose that option and I'm going to say that I want to swap the butterfly, oops, for a black and white photo of a hummingbird. Great. So I'm going to give that as my prompt, and it's going to take just a couple of minutes in order to make those edits to the image that we have applied here. While it's doing that, I'm going to make just a few other changes to the content here. So our event date, this is going to be coming out maybe on July 21st. Maybe it's at 4 p.m. to make it a little more family friendly. I have a few toddlers that might want to join, and we'll leave it at Hampton Park here in South Carolina. Great. So we have that here. Once our image comes in, we're also going to show editing our text as well. It's almost ready. We see it baking there, and there you go. So it took the image and it's going to show us the change that it made from that one image to this image here. I'm seeing some claps. We're liking that. Okay, great. I think that hummingbird looks pretty good. I'm also going to use AI to rewrite this. So if you click on any text fields, you have a few AI options here to do things like shorten, rewrite, or translate. I'm going to use this to replace this with content about a hike looking for hummingbirds. And similar to other AI that you're using in your day-to-day work, you want to be as specific as you can with the prompt that you're giving it. But then once you give it that detail, it will give you an option. And then you can also make changes to that, undo it. But you can see those text edits are very quick and very, very fast for those edits you want to make. And it's pretty good. It's even got some flitting through the trees, which is lovely. Fantastic. So now we've made those edits. The last thing I want to do is maybe swap out a little bit of the design that we have here by swapping my variant. So in our branded templates, I mentioned that we can't move anything or add anything or delete anything. You can change out the text, the images, and you can also swap any variants on any components that have been added. So that way, when your designer is setting up those templates, and Mal will show this in a little bit, it gives your marketers, your non-designers, some creative control over exactly what this looks like. So let's see what that looks like. So in this design, the design is fairly set here. This is on brand, but maybe I want to swap this for a bit of a different texture or feel. So I can swap between the different variants that I have set up here to find the one that matches the particular event that I'm hosting. So we're talking about hummingbirds. They like flowers. So I'm going to use this flower pattern instead of the original pattern that was there. And so that is the quick overview of creating content in Figma Buzz. So just to recap what we did, we started from a freeform out-of-the-box template, and that was this Ask Us Anything. And in that freeform editing, we can change anything about the design. Then we needed something that was more on brand. So I started by using a branded template, which brings us to focused editing. And here I can swap the images, the text, and then also any variants of content. The last thing I want to note is that the views here on the navigation, we have the different assets here, and you can add as many different assets as you want into a file in as many different sizes as you want. So if I wanted to add in a square format right here in the same file, I can add all of these, and I have this nice navigation to get between them. And this is what we call our asset view. If I wanted to see these all side by side, I could use what we call our grid view here by toggling over in the top left to grid view, which brings me out to this view where it's more of kind of a canvas. I can pan in and out by pinching or zooming on my trackpad. And these are all now side by side. And I can also create some organization for these assets by dragging them around. So I can reorder them this way. And I can also create different groupings of them by dragging them up and down. So now maybe I want each of these to be their own set. Maybe I'm going to add in more of these event series templates next to this one. So you can see very quickly, I can start to create an entire campaign in a single file by having all of my assets here. In this view, if I wanted to create additional organization here, I could even rename these. So I'm just going to say that this was our freeform editing that we showed. This was our brand or focused editing, for example, and then maybe what did I have down here? This is another freeform. This is another example. Example two. Great. So we have those names, and then also you can double click into any of the assets to name those as well. So if you have naming conventions that are very important for your campaigns or for the assets that the content you're creating, you can always double click in to name those as well. So maybe this is my hummingbird hike. Fantastic. So that was a lot that we just went over, and that's really the core experience for creating content in Figma Buzz, starting with an out-of-the-box template and starting with a branded template. The real power here of this branded template relies on having our templates published, which is something we imagine a lot of our brand designers or art directors or creative folks in the room are going to be doing. Now I'm going to pass it over to Mal, who's going to walk us through the flow of publishing those templates to make them accessible for your team.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie, for walking through that. We actually got a comment in the chat kind of teeing us up about where the brand templates created in Buzz or a regular design file, which is perfect segue. So they were actually created in a Figma design file. Now, this is kind of a point we want to just pause and make here, that you can totally go ahead and make your designs, your assets within Buzz. But we know that a lot of designers are already comfortable in Figma, and with the kind of limited interface in Buzz, which is on purpose, it might make more sense for designers to stay within Figma design and then bring their templates over to Buzz to publish. So we're back in Figma design here. And as you can see, I have all of the designs that we just talked about before. And if I were to go ahead and publish this as a template, it really is as simple as dragging and hitting Command C or right clicking to copy and paste. But before we do that, I want to just take a second here to go over some best practices for setting up your designs to make for really great templates for whoever is consuming them to use. And you can do this first in Figma Design, and I'll show you also how you'll be able to make these edits once you move into Buzz. But let's start off with going through some of these best practices when you're setting up the template. So this is really great for my designers or anybody on the call that's going to be setting these up. First, we should look into separating your text content. So as you saw with Katie's part of the demo when she was in that edit content field, that is one of the ways that you can actually swap out the content when you are editing, but you can also edit on the canvas. And these are actually going to be locked down if in focus view. So they kind of separate the intent of the content. And if we're looking at this, I think best practice here is if there are text boxes with separate content that folks are going to want to swap out, you might as well use two different text boxes for that content. You could easily put it into one, but it's just clearer and it makes more sense to the consumer that there's different content that needs to be swapped out. Additionally, if you're going to be using bulk create, this helps set up bulk create a little better for scaling. And you would also want to consider doing this if you are using different fonts or different font weights and styling in your designs. If we were to bring this over to Buzz and somebody swapped out the content in this one text box, you'll notice that I have two different fonts here, and it would just be replaced to this first one. It wouldn't retain the styling of the second font that I have. Now, if somebody were to use this template and were to swap out the content, it would retain those stylings because they're two separate boxes. So just some things to consider for making swapping out content more accessible. And following that, I want to talk a little bit about naming. So as designers, it can be very annoying to have to go in and think about layer naming and frame naming. But when you're creating templates for others to use, I think it is very important to take the time to do so. One, if you're seeing that when we create a frame, it just creates a default frame name, but this doesn't actually show the intent of what this template is to be used for. So I'd recommend talking with your team if you already have naming conventions, starting to use those naming conventions for your frame names like Katie was talking about, and have them be a little bit more specific to what the intent of this template is to be for. And same thing with your layer names. So your layer names for your text automatically are brought into that field labels for the edit content panel. So for example, the default text strings when you type out text are actually replacing that as your layer names. And this is okay if you're just designing assets, but if someone were to open up the edit content panel and see this number string, they may not understand what content they should be swapping there. Whereas if you were to change this to park number, for example, it's a lot more intentional and they know what content they should be putting there. So be mindful of what you are naming your text strings, your text nodes, as that name of that layer is fed into the field label. And we can go back into Buzz and kind of show what that looks like, but it's just a very helpful description for those editing content to be very aware of what they're looking at and what content is going where. You can also lock your layers. So locking your layers will prevent it from showing up in the edit content panel. So say, for example, I want this park highlight text to not be editable in focus mode. Automatically, when you bring in a design, it's going to take all of those text nodes and make them available in that edit content panel. But if you would like to prevent some of them from being editable, you can simply lock those layers. So here I have locked campaign name, and I could, for example, if I really wanted to lock down the park name, and then when I bring that in, it's not going to be editable for those using the template. So just considerations if you want that extra layer of, locking things down and keeping the brand standard. Great. See lots of questions. We'll definitely get to them. It's really exciting to see all of the reactions. So I'm hoping that this is helpful content as you start to build out your designs. A very simple but really helpful thing is just to start thinking about using auto layout, especially for text content in your designs. Especially since the recommendation is to split up the different text boxes. You'll notice that if I want to add more content here, I don't have it in an auto layout frame. I just have two text fields on my frame. And if I come in here and start to type, it's going to overlap. It's not going to be a great experience for those wanting to actually come in and swap content. But if I have auto layout set up and I just keep typing, you'll notice it pushes down and retains any of the spacing I have defined in my auto layout frame. So really helpful to just think about how you can start incorporating auto layout in a very basic way to your templates. And if you are ever curious, we also have, well, here I have remove auto layout, but I have suggest auto layout if you want to just really streamline and start setting that up. So you can use suggest auto layout. I forgot to also mention with layer naming, we have AI rename layers, which is really helpful. I found that it takes a really good first pass at renaming your layers. It's really quick. You can run it on any frame that you have in your file within the inserts panel here, the actions panel, and rename layers. My layers are renamed, so it's not really going to do anything. But if I wanted to force it to, you'll notice that it's going to go ahead and rename those. And that is how you run that function. And then the last thing I want to go over before bringing my templates over into Buzz and showing you how to actually publish them are those component variants. That is, Katie already showed a preview of that, but if you don't set up your templates using components sets for different variants you would like, you're definitely going to have a higher volume of templates, and folks are going to have to add a template to just swap out a different background element or design. So what you could do is say, instead of having 3 different templates for my 3 different flower options in the background, I can set this up as a component set. So this is a component set, and we're using variants to actually set this up. And then I took an instance of this component and dropped it into my frame here. And you'll notice I can come in and swap that out. So it'll be the same experience if I were to bring that in Buzz as well. So really helpful if you're wanting to kind of reduce the amount of templates that you're making. And then also you can educate the folks that are using your templates on how to swap out those different variants, and they can have a little bit of freedom even in focus view. Awesome. Well, those are some high level best practices for setting up your templates. These might already be built into your workflows, but it's always good to be mindful of just spending some time cleaning things up. Now to actually bring your designs over, once again, you can just select all of your signs on your canvas, go to a new Buzz file, and get started. Obviously, we're starting from scratch. It gives me a blank asset to jump off with. I can go ahead and delete that and then paste all of my assets in here, and they will come in, and I can start to organize these. So I can, organize into different rows like Katie was showing earlier if I want to, and just really streamline this process and organize. So really helpful ways that you can just bring your designs over and quickly organize them. Doing demos live always makes me nervous, but here we go. Looking much better. And so, yeah, perfect. We are in grid view. I actually find that when I am publishing templates, I really prefer to be in grid view. It's just helpful to get like that full bird's eye view. And as a designer, it's pretty much more what I'm used to from working in Figma design. And then I can go ahead and rename these. And those will be utilized when I publish the template as well. For time's sake, I'm not going to go ahead and rename all of my rows, but Katie will show what this looks like on the consumption side. And I did mention you are able to make some light tweaks to your templates for those best practices, even when you bring things over into Buzz. So if I forgot about renaming any of my layers or wanted to add auto layout to something, once I brought it in here, I can toggle into design mode and I'll have some options to do so. So I can see my layers here. I could go ahead and start locking things down if I wanted to. I can rename those field labels. So a really great example, if I wanted to change this here to just something very obvious, this has changed. And I can show you when we open that edit content panel, that is being pulled into that field label. So you'll see exactly what that relationship looks like, and you can always make that edit and contextually in Buzz. But I think we're ready to go ahead and publish, and I'll hit it back to Katie. To do so, it needs to be in a project. Luckily, I already created this file within my Buzz project, and I will name this Office Hours Collab Templates. And to publish, all you have to do is go to the share modal and click Publish Template. Here you'll be able to change the name of the file, upload a custom thumbnail and a brief description, and you can choose where you would like to publish the template to your entire organization or to the current team that the file is living in. So I will hit publish and it will do its magic. And then from here, you'll see once it's published, I can grab a link to the template and send it to anybody on my team, any collaborators, marketers that want to start using the template in a new file. Yeah, here we go. So I can just copy a link to the template or open up a new file and start using it. You'll also notice that when I'm in the template, I see this new banner here. You're viewing a template made by you. So I know that this is actually a template, a Buzz template that is out there and published. If you make any updates, so if I come in here and maybe change this to a very different color, like, let's see, and I want to publish that back out, I have to come back here and publish those changes. So just something to be mindful of. Katie is now going to have a really interesting design to work from, but just to demonstrate how you can make edits and publish those templates once you've already published them. With that, I'd love to pass it over to Katie to show bulk create and show how to use this template that I've just published.
Thanks so much, Mal. Chris says that they're loving it. Alfonso's excited about design mode being
Yeah.
in Buzz, so that's fantastic. I took back the screen share and I am viewing that template now that Mal just published, so you can see that here. And Diana asked, can you show what the template editors or non-designers see on their end when the templates get shared with them? So I'm going to show that. I can copy that link or I can click this use in a new file just as Mal did. So I'm just in the template, but if I wanted to use this, there's two ways I could do that. So I could come to the template and click use in this file, or I could go back to, and I'll show that. So what that experience looks like, Diana. So if I click use in file, it's going to bring it up and it's going to pull up that same template mode we saw at the beginning, but it's going to be open to those layouts that Mal just shared. I can also access those back in that file that I was showing originally. I can come in here and open up that template modal, and that was the one that I started with. But if I come back here to our templates and I find the one that Mal just published, it should be in here. Let me just search for it. I think it was OH. There we go. So that's the one that Mal just published, OH Collab templates. So I can browse those here and add those here as well. And so that's, Diana, how it looks when you are using the templates that someone has shared with you. And if I was to open that link, if Mal sent me the link maybe on our Slack channel, I could just open that up and that would bring me to the same kind of creation experience that we're seeing here. Great. I wanted to answer just a couple of other questions that I saw along the way. We got a lot of questions about resizing, so I'm going to quickly address that because we didn't touch on that yet. And also, someone asked if we could show how we got to that grid view again. Let me just find that question. Can you zoom out? Jessica says, can you zoom out again to the overview of the grid? Yes. So this is asset view is the default view. But Jessica, if you want to get to that grid view, it's just this toggle that's right here over on the left-hand side of the screen. And that brings us out to this grid view where we can see all of our assets at once here in this canvas view. Regarding resizing, I'm seeing a lot of questions about whether we can resize assets. So Rodrigo asked this, as well as SJ, about how can you make one piece of content in many different sizes. So if you have your assets, you'll notice that if you click on the main asset, you'll see this drop down for the size of the asset, and you can easily change these between different sizes. I'm going to first, to answer SJ's question, copy multiple versions of this so I could play maybe like 5 different versions of this one asset that I want to use. And then Buzz does have the ability to resize, and it will lay out the content of the design according to the new size. And big shout out to our engineer, Nick, who built this. And this recently just came out last week, so go try it out if you haven't already. But I'm going to leave this one in the original square format. And then maybe this one I need a story format so you can see how well that works of just resizing the asset, and all of the content that's in that asset then kind of reshapes to fit that new size. Maybe we also want a Facebook cover photo, and we want, I don't know, what other sizes do we want? Let's see here, a profile banner. And you can see all of this is going to reshape. So you see the text is resizing, it's relaying out, and then it's also adjusting the crop of the image. Maybe we'll go one large size, maybe a poster size. Why not? Okay, we have lots of sizes. So again, you can see how you can have all of that content for your command. I'm getting a lot of hearts here. Nick is going to be very happy to see all this excitement about this. And then you'll notice that some of these things like the images, maybe the crop isn't perfect here. I can always change that back to crop, and I can just reposition this individual image. But you can see very quickly here how I go from having one of these assets to having 5 of these assets, all for this particular campaign. And if you're sending up your branded templates for this, you can do things like set up things like auto layout, and some of those best practices Mal was just showing will also help to make sure that those branded contacts can resize in this way as well. Great, so that is resizing. And that's one way to create assets at scale, but we might want multiple versions of the same asset multiple, have the content from multiple versions of the content in different layouts. What I mean by that, okay, so we have 18 of these species spotlights, and we want to create an asset for each of these in multiple sizes and colors. Now I could go in and create these one by one, but you don't need to do that here in Figma Buzz because we have bulk create. So in order to create bulk create, I'm going to start by creating a new asset, and I'm actually going to pull in one of those templates that Mal just created. And actually, I'm not going to pull in one of them. I'm going to pull in multiple of them. So I'm going to pull in a few of my Instagram formats here, and then maybe some of my X formats as well. So a few different sizes, a few different colors. This is looking pretty good. So I have 6 layouts here, and I want to map all 18 of these species spotlights to these 6 layouts. So instead of doing these one by one, I can use bulk create, and bulk create is over here on the left. And then you upload your spreadsheet here. So I would need to export this spreadsheet into an XLS format. And then I can simply find that here and pull it in. And it needs to be in an XLS format in order to have images in there. You can use a CSV format if it's only text, but it's because I have images, I have that XLS file. And then I'm going to select all of the layers that match across all these designs. How I'm going to do that, I'm going to select the first one, and then there's this select matching layers button. So I'm going to select that, and then it's going to select all the layers that match that particular same layer across all the assets, and then I can map it to my data. So I can map all of my common names. I have this little tiny scientific name here that I can do the same with. I have the description here. And then, of course, I also have the images. And again, all I'm doing is select those matching layers across all of them and mapping them. The bulk create also includes the count of how many layers are mapped. That way, if there's some that aren't mapping across all of them, or there's some where they're only applicable to certain layouts, you'll know exactly how many are mapped to give you that spot check to make sure they're connected. But with all of those connected, I'm ready to go, and I can click create. You'll see the count right there to indicate how many assets it's going to create. And once I click that, it really just is a matter of seconds, and we'll have all 18 of those across all 6 different layouts. And you'll notice Mal created multiple sizes. So I have both my Instagram and my X formats here. And so I can do all of those at once. I don't have to do it certain sizes at a time. And so if I zoom out here, now all of those are being mapped across all of those sizes. And they also get very nicely grouped into the different layouts that we had. So all of our Instagram in each color is grouped, and then our X formats down here. And then once these are created, they're not static, they're fully editable. So if I needed to come in, I'm noticing that maybe this one is a little bit long. I can come in here and I can reduce this and just shorten that to antelope, for example. So these are all fully editable once they are created. Great. And then we had a question, I think, from Alexis about exporting. You can export anything in Figma Buzz using this export button in the top right corner here. And you can just do that and click export and select them. You can also select, I'm dragging by clicking on the canvas and dragging them. So I could select a subset of these and click that export, and it's going to select all of those ones that I have. I can also change that selection here. And then you have a few different options as far as the sizing of those, the file type that you need for those. And then you simply click export and it will export all of the ones that you have selected. Great. And so that is bulk create. And that is the recap of everything. That's the last thing that we wanted to make sure to cover before getting to Q&A. So if you haven't already, I've seen the team has been furiously answering. They've already answered 65 questions in the Q&A, but there are many more. And Liat has been helping us curate which questions we're going to discuss live. So we're going to move over to Q&A, but just to quickly recap, we started with freeform editing by starting with an out-of-the-box template. Then we used branded templates in order to create more focused on-brand editing experience. And then Mal showed us how to publish those branded templates for your team, along with some best practices to do that. And then finally, we ended with bulk create, and that's where you're creating content across multiple layouts at once. So with that, we're going to head back over to our deck here and into Q&A. So if you haven't already, get those questions in there. I'm also excited to introduce you to more folks of our team here. So Liat is one of our product marketing managers here at Figma. Jasmine is the product manager overseeing Figma Buzz. Natasha is a product designer at Figma Buzz. And then Chris is our I never say software engineer. Chris is our engineering lead on Figma Buzz, and we are so delighted to have you all here. Thanks so much for being here. We're going to head into questions and have them jump in on questions that are relevant for them. I'm going to pass the first question over to Natasha. Natasha, we have a question from an anonymous attendee. When should I use Figma Design versus Figma Buzz?
Hi, I'm Natasha, everyone. So glad to see everyone and seeing all the hype for Buzz. So to answer this question, Buzz is the main tool for your creative handoff, and that's sort of the general surface area to make your designs more accessible to other teams who are, let's say, less familiar with Figma or feel like Figma is too complex for their needs. So Buzz is really meant for you to, well, you can essentially design your templates anywhere. You could do that in Figma Design and then publish it in Buzz. And you can copy paste that directly. And as like Mal and Katie just showed you, it's really easy to just kind of go through that publishing experience in Buzz today. But if you do feel like you want more granularity as you're editing those templates, you can actually like flip the design toggle in Buzz and get access to all your Figma design tools there. But essentially, Buzz is really like the central surface for your other teammates who are maybe less familiar with Figma to come in and kind of like use those assets that you're creating in a more familiar space for them. But if you are a designer, you can also continue to do those edits in Figma Buzz today, but you can also use Figma Design if that's something you're more familiar with.
Fantastic. Thanks, Natasha. Thanks for that guidance there. I'm going to pass the next question to Jasmine. Jasmine, the question is, will the main template be affected by others who have access to it? Meaning if they accidentally change the colors, will that affect my template?
Hi everyone, I'm Jasmine. So nice to see you all here. So to answer this question, just changing this directly on the canvas without going through a republish flow will not change the core template. So in other words, if you have another collaborator who's also tweaking a template for you, in order for that to get published to the core source template, you would need to go through the update publish flow in the share menu. So just tweaking and playing around with things on the canvas does not update live unless you click that republish flow. Hope that helps.
Thanks so much, Jasmine. Passing the next question back to Natasha. Natasha, Katie is curious on whether you can bring existing designs and components from your design files to your Buzz files.
So, yes, so you are able to bring in your existing components and you can use these components in those templates that you're publishing. And like, once it's published, you'll be able to kind of use like the variant swapping control we have today to kind of like swap those things like what Katie is showing you there. So that kind of gives your teammates more flexibility to get like more modular controls to edit a template without fully like removing the guidances of this template. So that is possible today. We are in the middle of also thinking of making some of those component configurations more robust. So I know there are many teams here with more like component sets and more component props. So we're in the middle of like thinking about that problem space a little bit more to kind of make sure that whatever you are creating in Figma design today, be it components and component sets, a lot of that work can translate to Buzz as well.
Thanks for that, Natasha. And to add on to that, as far as how to bring them in, you could either copy and paste like Mal did from the design file to Figma Buzz, and the components will persist. Your team can also leverage your components but in the inserts menu by adding that library and then inserting the components themselves there as well. Thanks, Natasha. Okay, back to Jasmine for the next question from an anonymous attendee. How will Buzz user, sorry, but will Buzz users be notified about changes published in original components made in Figma?
So right now we don't have notification flows to notify people of updates, but this is something that we're actively looking into because we know this is very core to how design system updates get published. So this is really great feedback and signal to hear you all answering this question. So thanks for sharing that feedback.
Amazing. And I'm going to take the next question and just show this one once more. It was a great question from Rodrigo, and just want to show that again because it is very powerful. The question from Rodrigo is, can you take one Figma banner size and size it into different banner sizes in Figma Buzz? And the answer, of course, is yes. We did that with this example. I'll just pull in another template so you can see that I didn't select that just because it only works with that one. This works with any template. I'm going to come in here, and this is an Instagram portrait size. I'm going to reshape that into a story size. So all I'm doing is clicking this drop-down menu and sizing it into different sizes, and the content will resize according to the new format. Great question, Rodrigo. Great. Okay, I'm going to keep this one. Great. From another anonymous attendee, what are the other things I can make in Buzz? Email. Great question. I'm not sure who brought this up, but it is a great question. You can make all types of content in Figma Buzz. You can see when you get started in a Figma Buzz file, the types of common things that we see folks creating with the different categories that we have here. So everything from social to posters to invites to events, all of those types of things. Events use cases is a very common one that we're seeing, especially with that bulk create. If you need to create things like badges or placeholders or things that are customized for your event attendees, Figma Buzz can be a very powerful tool to take all the tedium out of that work. So all types of things you can create in Figma Buzz. As far as email goes, Figma Buzz isn't optimized for email creation today. That said, it can be used to create the content you're putting into the emails. So we don't have as much of a modular design that might be necessary in order to build out the entire design of an email. But for example, for creating header images or thumbnails for your emails, those can absolutely be created in Figma Buzz, and we would recommend trying that out soon. Great. And as far as your email use cases, if you need to design the entire layout of an email, Figma Design is still a great solution for that. Great. I'm going to pass it back over to Jasmine. We need to get Chris on a question. I don't know if we have a good one for Chris, but I'm looking out for you, Chris. We're going to pass this next one over to Jasmine. Paige says, I see there was a section for print templates. Wondering if there are any plans to support creating print-ready items in Figma Buzz, specifically the ability to convert colors to a CMYK format. A hot topic, Jasmine. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I know there was a lot of also written questions on print too, so really appreciate this feedback as well. This is one of the things that we're actively looking into on our roadmap, so it's so exciting to see all of the questions. You can set templates to be in print dimensions, but for things specifically like CMYK exporting, 300 DPI, those types of things, those are all things that we're actively looking into, so stay tuned.
Okay, Jasmine, we have another one for you on what's coming on the roadmap. Folks are curious about video. So Julio asks, can you add video? This is normally done in the fill of a color in Figma Design, but not here. Is there another way?
Yes. So video is also on our roadmap and something that we're looking into. You cannot insert a video or export as a video just yet, but this is something that we're also looking into. So again, very exciting to see the signal and the questions that you all are answering to help us validate what we're working on.
Amazing. Thanks, Jasmine. Okay, Chris is up. Alfonso asked the question, is Chris the GOAT, the greatest of all time? And the confident answer to that is yes. But Chris, we have another question for you from Abby. How can you edit the libraries in Figma Buzz? For example, add more logo variations, that type of thing.
Yeah, good question. So right now, basically what you have to do is create the template in Figma Design with instances of a component set, and you copy those over into Buzz. And when you publish them, similar to what Katie was doing earlier, when you publish them for a consumer, they'll show up correctly, meaning if I use that template and I select that instance, it'll show the variant swapper. We are looking into more ways, going back to what Natasha said earlier, to better integrate with design systems, where you could basically create a design system and light it up or enable it specifically for Buzz, so that if somebody goes into freeform editing, you would know which text and text styles and color styles they're using and which instances they're using in the inserts panel. So yeah, looking into a lot more here because we think the integration with design systems will be really powerful. But yeah, I think it's a great question.
And that was a great answer, Chris. Definitely the GOAT. Thank you for answering that one. Our next question is back to Natasha. Natasha, we have a question from another anonymous attendee. When you're flipping into the design mode and editing your original design in Figma, is it editing in Figma or only in Buzz?
It will be only editing in Buzz today. So again, if you are copy pasting something from Figma Design, like a template that you made there into Buzz and you toggle design mode to on, it's only editing that instance of that design in Buzz today. So currently there isn't that like relationship between the two editors, so Figma Design and Buzz. So it'll just be editing it in Buzz today.
Great. Thanks, Natasha. Passing it back to Chris. Chris, question from David here. Can I use grids in Buzz, especially if not starting from a template?
You should be able to in design mode, but not in Buzz mode. We haven't actually integrated with this very closely yet, but you should be able to in design mode. Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Passing it over to Leah. Leah, bringing you into the loop here. Thank you for curating Leah is curating all of our questions on the back end, and we greatly appreciate that, Leah. But question for you from Chris here. I heard that Buzz will be under a new content license. Does the content license replace the collaborator license? And if not, what is the difference?
Yeah, it's a great question. We got a lot of questions around what this new content seat means, as it was announced about a month ago. So to clarify, Figma Buzz is currently in beta, and while it's in beta, it's free for anyone to use, to try. There are a couple limitations when it comes to Starter and Pro, but otherwise it's free to use while in beta. Eventually, when Buzz becomes generally available, it will be available for purchase as part of the content seat, which it will be new, as well as the full seat and on the dev seat. The collaborator seat will remain separate as they bundle different features and they offer different features. That said, we don't have a date yet for when Buzz is going to be generally available. It's not something that we're publicly sharing, but please stay tuned as you will know when Buzz becomes generally available.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Liat. And I think that wraps up all of the questions, and we're also heading towards time. So thank you all to our wonderful question answers and product team on Figma Buzz. We appreciate you so much. Thank you, Liat, Chris, Natasha, and Jasmine. Getting lots of love and claps in the heart. Someone mentioned that we all seem so happy and wondering what the secret is. The secret is we're working on Figma Buzz, and we're so excited to bring Figma Buzz to all of you. So we really appreciate you all being here and spending time with us today to learn about Figma Buzz and also bringing your questions and feedback. That really helps us. We're just getting started with Figma Buzz. We have so much more in store for what we're going to do and the content creation that we'll be able to unlock for you in the future. So keep sending us your feedback, keep sending us your questions through the support channel. And we can't wait to see what you create with Figma Buzz. With that, thank you all so much. Mal, thank you so much for demoing templates and being here today to walk everyone through this content.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was so much fun.
Amazing. And thank you to everyone for being here today. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you soon.